All right, let's kick off this conversation tonight. Remember, we're telling you about women's rights on this International Women's Day 2016. The hashtag we're using tonight is Gender Agenda, so please feel free to tweet us at KTN News, at Yvonne Okwara. You can also send us a message on Facebook. The Facebook page is Yvonne Okwara. Send us a text message too to the number 22155, and let's talk a little bit more about this, particularly where we've started in terms of women in decision-making positions. But let me reintroduce my panel to you tonight on Bottomline East Africa. I will start at my extreme right. That's Dina Awor, who's from the National Women's Steering Committee. We then have Winnie Lichuma, who's from the National Gender Equality Commission here in Kenya. She's the chair of that. And then Siddharth Chatterjee, who, by the way, Kenyans, just refer to as Sid. It's good to have you with us, from the United Nations Population Fund, and Gina Dean Kariuki, who's also no stranger here. Thank you all for coming. I think we'll start with you, Winnie, because this is exactly what you deal with at the Gender Equality Commission. In terms of the numbers, we've had you on KTN News before, just talking about where Kenya is compared to the rest of the continent and why finding this formula is so difficult.
Yeah, thanks, Yvonne. Kenya as a country, I think we are doing well in terms of the policy and constitutional framework. The Kenya Constitution 2010 is quite clear. It provides for the minimum, which is the not more than 2/3 gender rule. And we know that this is in both appointive and political, and of course appointive and elective positions. And that is in Article 27(8). As a country, we have not done too well, especially in appointive positions. Yeah. Just taking, for example, the appointments of the cabinet secretaries, we know the recent reshuffle, His Excellency did not meet the 2/3 gender rule, and we reminded him. Our role is to give advice, so we have reminded him that the minimum is 33%, but currently, as constituted, the cabinet has only 21.7% of women. Yeah. Looking at the other reflections, the judiciary, I think everyone is trying. County assemblies, politically, we were able to meet the 2/3 gender rule, courtesy of the framework that is within the Constitution. The National Assembly and the Senate, we were not able to meet the 2/3 gender rule, clearly because there's no clear framework. We know that Kenyans are not sensitive to electing women in these political seats. And affirmative action has been used elsewhere to bring in the numbers where, for one reason or another, historical injustices, we have not had the numbers. Right. And I think I want to remind all of us, as we talk about women, women are not homogeneous. We also are talking about women with disabilities. Yes. We're talking about women from marginalized. We're talking about women who are youth. But I also want in this debate to talk about the inclusion principles. Inclusion principles include the persons with disabilities generally, the people from marginalized communities, the elderly, and the marginalized or the minorities. Okay. So as a country, when we look back on what we've been able to achieve, Yvonne, it hasn't been an easy task. Yeah. I have to follow governors to really remind them that the 2/3 gender principle is there for all of us. Right. And I'm happy to say that even at the CEC's level, the executive levels in the county governments, most of them have tried, but we've not made the 2/3 gender rule. So the numbers must be seen, and then we need to go beyond the numbers. Okay. But now we can't go beyond the numbers because we haven't.
We're still stuck at getting the numbers.
Yes, and so we have not made the 2/3 gender framework within the National Assembly, the Senate. My fear is we get to 2017 without a clear framework, and we run into trouble.
Yeah, and we will be focusing on politics then, rather than this very important issue. Yes. So some progress made, but still a long way to go. Not too good. Dina, why is this important? I mean, we talk about this all the time, but I think it's important to re-emphasize. Why is it important to have women included at this decision-making level, within the legislature, even within the cabinet at a national level? We keep saying it, but perhaps we don't say it enough. Why is it important?
No, I think as women we've said it enough, and we are still going to continue saying it. But I believe that women are important at these levels because simply women humanize leadership, and they make leadership more tangible, in terms of how they approach it. And for me, I believe that women, without the voice of women in these very critical positions, then we lag behind as a country developmentally.
And they are a large part of, of the country. Almost half the population is made of women. So if you have a representation that doesn't include half of the population, then that's something worrying, isn't it?
And that means that you're letting, like President Obama said, you're letting half of your team out, and that makes the game not fair.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Gina, let's talk a little bit about also within the private sector, because this is a big issue. We know what's happening nationally, but truth be told, even within the private sector, strong, successful women in the boardrooms are very hard to come by.
Yeah, there are just not enough of them.
Yeah.
But it comes back to the same thing. Who is making the decisions?
Yeah.
And unless we sort it out at a fundamental level, we're never going to get beyond that. It's still the men that are making the decisions. So it's where do we go? Where we just have to keep pushing to get more women into leadership right across the board, government, policy making, private sector for sure. It's getting a bit better in private sector, but it's definitely not where we need to be.
All right. Why is it important in the private sector? We know about the national level, but tell us about the importance in the private sector, in business, to have more women. By the way, not just in leadership, but across all spheres of the workforce.
Well, if half the population are women, first of all, it's only fair that women are part of any workforce. I mean, I think the other thing is women are just generally paid less than men for doing exactly the same work.
Right.
So, there are a number of issues here. There are just not enough women in private sector. There are not enough women at leadership positions in private sector. And the ones that are there, chances are they're being paid less than their male counterparts.
They also have to make greater sacrifices,
Oh,
don't
definitely.
they?
I mean, women run homes, they're looking after their kids.
Yeah.
They definitely have to work twice as hard as men to even get noticed.
Okay.
So, I think this issue of women is just a very big issue.
All
And
right.
it's something, the fact that we have to keep even having 2/3, even fighting for that 2/3, I mean, I think that in itself is a problem, and we can't even achieve the 2/3.
Yeah, okay. Sid, this is important. Why? And talk to us about why this is something not just that you do for a living, because we know you are absolutely passionate about this issue as well.
Well, let's take some of the facts that relate to Kenya and perhaps Africa as a whole. Kenya is at the cusp of a demographic dividend. Over 70% of Kenya's population is under 30.
Yeah.
Now let's take a few statistics. Kenya is probably got one of the most youthful populations with an average age of about 28 by 2020, which is a huge advantage. It's a youth bulge,
Right, yeah.
which indicates that if Kenya takes advantage of this youth bulge, just like the Asian tigers did, they leapfrog their economies. But for every 100 Kenyans that are employed, there are 81 dependents. Half of those dependents are women and girls.
Right.
So which means that if you take that half out from that 81 and make it 140 Kenyans who are earning an income with
There
40
you go.
dependents, that changes the game.
Yeah.
Essentially, what UNFP is advocating for is Kenya cannot achieve its full economic potential unless and until its women and girls are empowered. They're able to take decisions on the sizes of their families. They're able to take decisions as far as their education is concerned. They're given the tools and the skills so that they become an equal player. As Obama said, 50% of the population cannot be left out.
Right.
Because Kenya is set to grow. The growth is going to be rapid. But if that 50% continues to be dependent, Kenya most likely will get old before it grows rich.
Interesting way of putting it. Thank you for those facts and figures. We'll most likely grow old before we get rich, and leaving out a big part of our population, close to half of our population really.